They say ambition is a fire. But what happens when the flame consumes everything, even the man who lit it? Close your eyes for a moment. Picture a young man, barely in his 20s, standing at the edge of the known world, dust swirling around his boots, staring into the blinding sun of a foreign desert. Behind him, an empire, stretched wider than anything the world had ever seen. Before him, nothing but silence, sky, and the unbearable weight of victory. He had conquered everything, and yet he was lost. This is not the tale of a man who simply won battles. It's the story of someone who chased immortality, not knowing that it might cost him his soul. But to understand Alexander, we need to start not with his triumphs but with his questions. From a young age, Alexander of Macedonia was fed legends. Achilles, Heracles, gods and demigods. Their blood, it was said, ran in his veins. His mother, Olympias, whispered secrets into his ear, that he was destined, that Zeus himself had visited her in a dream, that no throne could hold him and no border should stop him. His father, King Philip III, was a warrior and a politician, brilliant, feared, but never truly loved. Alexander worshipped him, and he resented him. When Philip was assassinated, his blood staining the floor during a wedding, Alexander ascended. But he didn't mourn, he acted. The boy who had once studied under Aristotle now stood before hardened generals and made them swear loyalty. Then, like a whirlwind, he swept across Greece, silencing rebellion not with words, but with fire. Thebes was leveled, its people sold, its story buried under ash. It was not cruelty, it was theater, a warning. Then came Asia. He crossed the Hellespont with a force dwarfed by the Persian Empire's might. But Alexander did not believe in numbers. He believed in momentum and destiny. The first major clash came at the river Granicus. Persian satraps lined the banks, their cavalry itching to strike. Alexander didn't hesitate. He led the charge himself, spear in his hand, fury in his eyes. The river became a storm, blood mixed with water. And when it was over, the Persians had fled, and a legend had begun. But what made him different? Why did his men follow him into hell over and over again? Because Alexander was not a general behind the lines. He fought at the front. He bled with them. He remembered their names. He shared their water when the sun turned their armor into ovens. And when they doubted, he told stories of Troy, of gods, of a world remade by their hands. But inside, the fire raged hotter. At Issus, he faced King Darius III himself, the ruler of Persia. The battlefield was chaos. Dust, screams, thunderous hooves. Alexander's phalanx locked into place, spears like a forest of death. Then he spotted Darius and charged at him. Darius fled. The god king had turned his back. It was a moment so humiliating, so shattering, that the Persian Empire never truly recovered. And yet, for Alexander, it wasn't enough. He entered Egypt, not as a conqueror, but as a liberator. The priests called him son of Amun. He founded Alexandria. He studied the stars. But even there, under moonlit pyramids, his mind raced forward, conquering the east, into the heart of the Persian Empire, Babylon, Susa, Persepolis. The cities fell like dominoes, their wealth unimaginable. In Persepolis, Alexander hesitated. This was the jewel of the empire. Its palaces glittered. Its libraries held knowledge centuries old. And yet, in a night of drunken fervor and grief, Alexander watched it burn. Some say it was revenge for what the Persians did to Athens long ago. Others believe it was regret, turned outward, a man beginning to realize he was chasing a ghost. Because conquest has a cruel irony. The more you take, the less it gives. In India, the monsoons punished him. The elephants terrified his men. The local kings fought with a fury he hadn't seen before. At the Battle of the Hydaspes, he faced King Porus, a man towering, fierce, proud. The fight was brutal, but Alexander won. And when Porus was brought before him, beaten and bloodied, Alexander asked how he wished to be treated. Like a king, Porus said, and Alexander laughed, not with scorn but admiration. He gave him his kingdom back. But something had shifted. His men began to murmur. They had marched for years. Their boots had turned to leather rags. They missed home, and Alexander no longer seemed like one of them. He had begun dressing like a Persian, speaking in riddles, drinking too much, mourning too often. In a fit of rage, he killed Clitus, the man who had saved his life once. The guilt almost broke him. Then came the moment no one expected. His army refused to go on. At the edge of the world, they said no. And Alexander listened. They turned back, slowly, through deserts that swallowed men, through sickness and starvation, through whispers that their god-king had cracks. From the moment Alexander turned back at the Hyphasis River, when his army, worn to the bone, stood like an immovable wall, something fractured in him. The invincible aura he had worn like a second skin began to fade. Not for lack of power, but for the limits of the human heart. He sat alone that night, staring into the flames, not as a conqueror, but as a man faced with the unbearable silence of his own mind. The ghosts of every city he had razed haunted him. The screams of Thebes, the ash of Persepolis, the blood of Clitus. He once believed glory could quiet those echoes. But now, glory only amplified them. As they returned westward, his army witnessed a different Alexander, one draped in silence more than armor. He became obsessed with omens and dreams. He spoke often of his place among the gods, not as a boast, but as a question. Was he mortal? Had he transcended? Or was he simply lost in the myth he had created? In Carmania, a strange episode unfolded. Alexander, dressed in flowing Persian robes, rode in a golden chariot through the streets in a mock Dionysian procession. Music blared, wine flowed. It was spectacle, yes, but also a mask. A desperate man laughing in the face of his own unraveling. And yet, even then, his mind raced ahead. Arabia, the distant Atlantic, a unified empire stitched together not just by force, but by vision. He married Roxana of Bactria. He encouraged his generals to wed Persian noblewomen. It wasn't politics. It was a blueprint, a future where East and West merged, where his name would not just be remembered, but lived in culture, in language, in bloodlines. But such dreams demand time, and time, for Alexander, was running out. Back in Babylon, as he mapped new campaigns and made grand pronouncements, he began to fall ill. At first, it was a fever, then weakness, then whispers. Poisoned? Plagued? Struck by the gods? The great lion was fading. For days he lay speechless, unable to move, yet fully conscious. His soldiers passed by his bed in silence, one by one, just to see his face. Many wept. They had followed him across the earth, and now, powerless, they watched as the man who had seemed eternal crumbled like any other. When he finally spoke, his words were simple. Who should lead? To the strongest. Some believe he meant it as a challenge, others as a curse. His death unleashed chaos. His generals, once bound by loyalty, became warlords. The empire fractured into the successor kingdoms. The dream of unity collapsed under the weight of ambition. And yet, the ripple of his life never stopped. The Hellenistic age was born not just of conquest, but of cultural fusion. Libraries in Alexandria preserved knowledge that would later ignite the Renaissance. Sculptures captured human form with divine reverence. Philosophy, science, astronomy, all carried traces of the fire he had sparked. Alexander became a mirror. For centuries, emperors, from Rome to Napoleon, looked into it and saw what they wished to become, or feared they already were. And beneath the bronze statues and marble reliefs, behind the epics and histories, lies a single truth. Alexander was a boy who wanted to be a god, but died a man who couldn't outrun his own humanity. The price of greatness is rarely paid in gold or land. It is paid in silence, in sleepless nights, in the eyes of men who follow, only to find the path leads to a grave. So, when we speak of Alexander the Great, let us remember not just his victories, but his questions. Because in those questions, we find ourselves